Welcome in to a special episode of No One Asked Us. It is Oscar season, and right in the middle of all the college basketball stuff that's been going on this channel, I had to get on here and talk movies. So I brought in a good friend of mine from college, Karsten Burgstahler is here. Another Saluki alum. That's kind of a theme for this show.
Yes.
We've had several Saluki alums that have been on this show. So you are another entry into that catalog. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. We've been talking about doing something like this for a while. You are one of the other, I don't know, do you call yourself a cinephile? Do you like that word? Is that something you use to describe yourself? Because I struggle with the word.
The first time I heard the word, I'm like, that sounds gross. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, just the suffix "file" on there is like, I don't know about that. You know what? I've embraced it because that's the term. So
you and I both, we just spend a lot of time at the movie theaters. That's all there is to it. And there's nothing else more we need to talk about. But yeah, this has kind of been my thing for a while, and I knew that when I wanted to do something like this, that you would be a good person to bring on. Before we get started, as always, all of our viewers and listeners out there, give us a follow on all of our social media at No One Asked Us Pod on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Subscribe to the page if you haven't done that already. Our Illini post-game shows have been doing really well, and we will have another one on Thursday because Illinois did get a late game. So Craig and I will be back for that on Thursday. But as I said, the Oscars are this Sunday. So this is not necessarily an Oscars preview, but this is going to be essentially a top 10 movies of the year show. So what we've done is Karsten and I have both put together our own personal top 10 lists. How it broke down is that there were 7 movies that were on both of our lists. So that means there's 3 movies that are on one of our lists. So we have 13 movies we're going to talk about. We're going to just go down the list, kind of maybe give you guys some ideas. If you have, have some free time, some looking for a movie to watch, we have some suggestions here. And we're excited to do this. So before we get started too, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
When we go 5-10 years in the future and we look back on 2022 in movies, how are we going to think about this year? What's going to define this year in terms of film?
I think no doubt Top Gun.
Yeah.
I think it would just, there were some moments in 2021 where it was like the theater's back, Fast and Furious did well. Quiet Place 2 did really well. And obviously, No Way Home did really well. But it seems like Top Gun was just that movie that hit every quadrant, and it just played for weeks on end, like all summer long. And it's the type of blockbuster movie making that, I think even Spielberg said Tom Cruise saved the industry. And it is, I think it's the reason why movie theaters will stick around for at least a while longer, because that movie got people back in the theater.
Yeah. Now we're still very much in a 2022 especially we're still seeing effects of the pandemic in the film industry. Mm-hmm. Movies don't happen overnight. These things take months, sometimes years to produce. You have movies like Top Gun that were essentially done before the pandemic even started. And you have films that were shot entirely during the pandemic. Our list will touch on some of these movies that are very much pandemic movies. There's one in particular that we both have on our list that right up front, like right at the very beginning, we know this is a pandemic movie. And we're still seeing some of these things now. I mean, not that this movie we'll talk about here or that it will even deserve to be on this show next year, but I mean, Ant-Man Quantumania to me feels just like a movie that was shot during a pandemic. So, I mean, we're still living in this world. I mean, we may be out of that, but as far as movies go, and even TV to an extent, we're still seeing that. And I think that while it is better than I think what we got in 2021 and 2020 especially, we're definitely still seeing some of the ramifications of that pandemic, which is obviously playing a factor.
I think I saw a report that they don't expect the full output of Hollywood to be back to what it was pre-pandemic until like 2025. Right. And I mean, you see it like each week you get maybe one new movie, 2 if you're lucky. And obviously some of that is, streaming platforms.
Yeah,
Studios it's going to work, and so they just dump it on Hulu or,
correct.
But I don't know. Like, I used to feel like I got a lot of use out of my A list.
Yep.
And I still do. I'm definitely, no doubt making the subscription cost back. But it's like, okay, I'm going maybe once a week now, as opposed to the twice that I could reliably count on in the past.
And there's just so much that just goes straight to streaming. And again, that's part of the two. The pandemic coincided really with the boom of streaming. It used to be just Netflix and occasionally a Hulu or whatever. But the Disney Plus and the Peacock and Apple TV Plus, Paramount Plus, like all that stuff, all that boom happened the same time of the pandemic. So there's just more content out there. Studios want more content. They have to fill, not only do they have to put a movie in a theater every 4 months, but now they have to fill their catalog on the streaming service to make sure that people are constantly coming back to that. And we're seeing that, I talk about it a lot on another show with, the Marvel universe in particular, just the overload of stuff there, but it's not just a Marvel thing. This is every studio type of situation where Marvel and those movies come into play here is that they are so heavily dictated by the visual effects. And those things take so long to do. And there's the whole thing going on with not enough time and everything else. But it's everywhere. It's not just that industry. It's not just that segment of the industry. It's movies as a whole. So
I'll give studios a little bit of credit. It feels like, and maybe because of the success of Top Gun, we're starting to see some pushback into the theaters. Warner Brothers has already said they're going to, focus on theatrical. Disney said they're going to slow down some of the Marvel output, which they certainly need to do. And Amazon is starting to release more stuff. The Air Jordan movie coming out in April was going to be an Amazon exclusive, and now it's going to play in theaters.
Right.
And we need more, mid-level content like that.
Yep.
In the cinema. Yeah,
I agree. We're just seeing less and less of that, less and less rom-coms, less and less studio comedies. Those things just don't exist at that level. It's either big budget blockbuster, multi-billion-dollar movies, or it's straight to streaming horror movies. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So, all right, let's get into this thing. As I said, we have 13 movies we're going to talk about. This is essentially in our order, 10 to 1, sort of. It's obviously a little jumbled because we don't have the exact same lists, but that's how we're going to do it. So I'm going to start at the top. Number 10 on my list is a movie called Cha Cha Real Smooth. Now, I know this is the movie on my list that you haven't seen, and you have one movie on your list that I haven't seen, which actually I think works out really well. Absolutely. So Cha Cha Real Smooth came out over the summer, I believe, like June, I think. It was an Apple TV Plus release. This movie is written and directed by a young filmmaker by the name of Cooper Raiff. Cooper Raiff did another film that released in 2020 that I was very much telling people to seek out. It was very difficult to seek out because it wasn't really on a streaming service and pandemic and all that stuff, but it was called Shithouse. It's a movie I really enjoyed. And Cooper Raiff at the time when he did Shithouse was like 22 years old. And writing and directing and starring in this movie about a college student dealing with homesickness, essentially. Now he's back. He did another movie that, as I said, came out in June called Cha Cha Real Smooth. Also written, directed in this one, starred in this one as well. Starred alongside Dakota Johnson's in this, playing opposite of him. Leslie Mann is in this movie as well, playing his mom. There's also another young actress by the name of Vanessa Burkhart that is tremendous in this movie. Essentially, this is, whereas Shithouse was a story about a college student, Cha Cha Real Smooth is a kid just out of college. He's 26 years old. I think that's about the same age that Cooper Raiff is as he's directing and writing this movie. The logline for this, basically fresh out of college, this stuck at home New Jersey kid. He's a party starter for like bar mitzvahs and stuff. And he develops this friendship relationship with Dakota Johnson's character and her daughter, played by Vanessa Burkhart, who I mentioned. And they just strike up a relationship and a friendship, and it's just a great fun time at the movies. Granted, I didn't have to actually go to the movies to see this one. This one was seen at home. I really liked it. This was my number 10 movie for the year. I knew that I would like it from the very beginning. It was just speaking my language, just because I loved what he had done in his first movie. I don't know if did you even see Shithouse?
I did not. No.
Yeah, so that one did not get on a streamer. I mean, you can rent it, like you can rent any movie. That's how I had to watch it, but it was a little harder to find out. This one is on Apple TV Plus, so it'll be there for forever. So if you have an Apple TV Plus subscription, I highly recommend it. This is just a fun movie with a nice cast, and it was a good time. It was a good time. I highly encourage you to check it out. So, all right, what do you got? What's your number 10?
So my number 10 was The Black Phone, a horror movie that came out over the summer. And say I probably would have seen Cha Cha Real Smooth in June, but like streamers, just there's so much.
There's a lot.
And I
there's a lot.
Ended up just blanking. So yes. But in June, it was Black Phone last summer, from Scott Derrickson, who has become pretty well known for his horror films. Did Sinister back in 2012, which to this not a lot shocks me when it comes to horror films. That movie shocked me. There was some pretty crazy stuff in there, and then he kind of evolved into the Marvel franchise. Did Doctor Strange back in 2016. Was supposed to do Doctor Strange 2. Ended up in a little bit of a back and forth with Disney. Left the project. And to be honest, I think that might have actually been for the best, because we got Black Phone out of that. And because even though I don't have Doctor Strange on my list, for multiple reasons, I think Sam Raimi's touch was apparent in that movie. And that I really liked having that a little bit more auteur in the Marvel films. Scott Derrickson went on to do Black Phone, which was a horror film. If you haven't seen it, it was about a 13-year-old boy who was kidnapped by a sadistic killer and trapped in a soundproof basement. No screaming, no one can hear him. He's not too far from home, but stuck in this basement where no one can find him. Door's locked. And there's a disconnected phone on the wall. It begins to ring, and he can, through that phone, hear the voices of all of the boys who have been abducted before him. Each of them giving him little tips for things that he can use in the basement, ways that he might have overlooked that he might be able to escape. And so the movie is kind of working in two settings: A, the basement, but B, the boy's sister, who's trying to find him and lead the cops to the killer's house. It's a horror movie. To be honest, I didn't think it was particularly scary, but it was super tense. It gave us what I think maybe would have been one of the most tense moments that we saw on screen last year. There's a scene where he's trying to escape the basement, and the killer's at the top of the stairs in a chair wearing this really creepy mask. You can't tell if he's asleep or just sitting there waiting for the boy to escape. And him, walking past him and trying to get to the door was like completely breathless. It's Ethan Hawke plays the killer, completely different type of performance for him. He's fantastic. He's menacing. The movie builds really well to a really good climax. And I think it's one of the, like I said, not incredibly scary, but a very inventive horror/thriller that we got this year. And I'd like to see more of that when it comes to horror films.
Yeah. This is the one movie on your list that I haven't seen. As you probably know, I'm not a huge fan of horror movies. But this is one that I did at some point mean to watch, and it just never happened. I think that's just the nature of how this stuff works anymore. So, but yeah, I heard it wasn't particularly scary. I knew at some point I would probably watch it, but I just never did it. So it's one that I definitely will watch at some point. But unfortunately, before I did this, I hadn't done it yet. So either way, well, that's good. So those are both of our number 10 movies. So I'll go ahead and get started. So from now on, every movie both of us have at least seen. They may not be on each of our lists like this one is. So this next movie is The Banshees of Inisherin. This is the movie that I have on my list. I have it at number 6. This is Martin McDonagh's next film that he wrote and directed. Stars Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, Barry Keoghan, Jenny the Donkey. Plays a great role in this movie. This is a movie takes place in Ireland. It's a couple of friends that just all of a sudden one day one of them decides he doesn't want to talk to the other one, and it bugs the living shit out of the other friend. It's just It's a beautifully shot, it's beautifully written. It's probably one of the best scripts of the year. It's you can just tell Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson just have chemistry, real life chemistry. They're good friends in real life. This is not their first rodeo in Bruges, which I don't remember what year that came out, but that was the two of them together. Great performances from both of them. Colin Farrell's probably the front runner for Best Actor at the Oscars, leading actor at the Oscars, though that's
really
well. I shouldn't say that. I think at one point he was, but anymore it's certainly a 3-man race, and I don't know that I can predict who's going to win. But Gleeson and Keoghan and Condon are all nominated for their works in this movie. I really like this. I did not see this one in the theaters. See, this is the world we live in now, is that you at least live in a bigger city. I do not. Movies don't stick around very long in theaters in small towns. I don't know how it is with you in Atlanta.
yeah.
I don't think Banshee's stuck around in the theaters here for much longer than maybe 2 weeks. So if you don't get to it in the 2 weeks, then I waited and I watched it at home, which was fine. I enjoyed watching this movie at home on my couch on HBO Max. But I think it's a movie that I would have maybe had a different experience with had I watched it in a theater full of people. Granted, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with theaters full of people anymore anyway. But yeah, I think it would have given me a different experience. I probably would have laughed more if other people were laughing around me, because I wasn't sure what things I was supposed to be laughing at and what things I wasn't. But this is it's a movie that I really enjoyed. I think it's certainly one of the best 4 or 5 movies of the year. It's not going to win Best Picture, but I do think it's deserving of several awards that it'll probably get from the Oscars. So this is definitely one that I really enjoyed.
Yes, how long we had it? I think we had it for several months.
Probably, yeah.
It was just awful, and I didn't get out to see it, so that was my fault. And I think toward the end of it, I saw it was going to be on HBO Max, like
right.
within 3 weeks, and so I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm just gonna wait.
Yep.
I agree with everything you said, and frankly, it probably would have been number 11 on my list. I thought the performances are really good. It's just a great sense of place. I felt like I was there. I love the set design. I love the dialogue. It just felt very authentic. A little surprisingly violent toward the end.
Yes, it was. It was. I did not see that coming.
Yes. But I think that it worked.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. I did not see it coming. And my mom brought up a good point to me, that I had a friend in high school, not necessarily like a best friend, not somebody that I was super close to, but at one point he just really stopped wanting to talk to me, and it really bothered me for like 2 years. And my mom pointed that out to me after I watched this movie. So maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, is because I felt like I was living that experience. But yeah, it's just, I think it's a really good movie. I think it's one of the best scripts of the year. Where are you at on Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri? Martin McDonagh's movie that came out 4 years ago, whatever.
Yeah, 2017. I enjoyed it. I know it's kind of a love-hate from most of the people that I've talked to about that one. I think I liked it. God, I want to say that I liked it more. I liked the performances a little more. But I'm also a massive Frances McDormand fan. So, yeah.
That's the movie that I named best movie of 2017, and I have not revisited it since.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of one of those things that there's a few of those out there that in the moment I think it's the best thing, and it's not one. I think it's sitting on my shelf somewhere, but I haven't popped it in the DVD player, the Blu-ray player, probably since 2017. So, anyway, I think this is probably better. Banshees is probably better. They both have a great script. They both have great performances, but rightfully so. I think a lot of people are comparing the two because they're his most recent works. So, all right, what's next?
Okay. On my end, so my number 8 pick was The Northman, which is Robert Eggers, his follow-up to The Lighthouse, which was beautiful from a cinematography standpoint. A little inaccessible in my opinion, and so I appreciated that we got that same level of beauty with this movie in a sense that was more accessible. And so it's kind of it's an older epic. It follows a prince who is on the verge of becoming a man. His father is brutally murdered by his uncle, who then kidnaps his mother. Then the boy grows up, goes out to try to avenge the death of his father to get his mother back. There's some twists along the way. Most of it is his process, his road to revenge, and then kind of a twist in the middle of the movie that throws his motivations into doubt. Like I said, I appreciated that beauty with the weirdness. Just a beautiful movie to look at, a super engaging film, and I liked the turn that it had in the middle.
This movie came out. When did this movie? It was early in the year.
April.
Because this was one of the first real contenders I saw in the year, and it was high on my list for a while. But eventually, over the course of the year, it kind of faded off my list. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really well put together. I really thought I thought it had great performances. I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was great.
Fantastic.
I thought we would get more Willem Dafoe. He wasn't really super heavily involved in this. But I liked it. I'm going back now and looking at my Letterboxd review for this. By the way, I didn't mention it. I put Karsten's Letterboxd thing below his name and mine as well. So if you're interested in checking out all of our other movie stuff, you can do that if you're into that sort of thing. But I don't know. Anyway, this is a movie that it's not on my list. It's a little ways outside of my top 10, but it's still a really good movie, and it's one that I can totally understand why it would be on your list. And it was high on my list for a while. Okay, the next one, I'm really interested to hear why this wasn't on your list. Not that I'm defending that this is the best movie of the year. I certainly don't think that it is. But this is already a movie we've already talked about on this show already. It's Top Gun Maverick. This is my number 4 movie of the year. And it's a movie that you don't have on your top 10. So I cannot wait to discuss that. I don't think we need to discuss this movie at too much length. I think everybody that's listening or watching this show has seen Top Gun Maverick, knows what Top Gun Maverick is. I didn't think this movie had any business being as good as it was. The original Top Gun is an 80s classic, but I don't think that movie was ever in any sort of discussion for like best film of anything. It was just Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise in a good 80s movie. And then 30 some years later, we get a sequel, and it's like the best thing of the year. As you already mentioned, this movie essentially saved the cinema. Tom Cruise single-handedly saved movies. This is a movie that was shot and essentially finished before the pandemic even started. It was one of the first movies that got bumped, I think, from in 2020.
It was gonna be Christmas 2020 for a while. We know how that went.
Yeah. And every streaming service under the sun was trying to acquire the rights for this movie to distribute it during the pandemic, and Tom Cruise did not let that happen. He wanted no part of that. He said, this is a movie that has to be seen in the theaters on the big screen, and we are all better for that decision. It was, as I said, it had no business being as good as it was. Great performances, great action, great shots. Of course, he's proud of it, of how much it was actually, how much of his actual stunts and everything else, how he was actually, flying those planes. And it was great. This is the movie that I've probably already watched the most from this year. Not that it's my favorite movie of the year, but it's one that I think I'm not alone here, where I think it's just been playing in people's houses since May. I think it came out Memorial Day weekend or something like that, and it lasted in the theaters. It's probably still playing in some theaters, and this movie came out Memorial Day weekend. So, Top Gun Maverick, easily a top 5 movie of the year for me. Karsten, why was it not on your top 10 list? I'm very curious.
Okay, so not that it's bad. It's an enjoyable movie. As I sat there watching it, I'm like, the stunts are amazing. The cinematography is great. I could not stop thinking, though, would this movie be as good if I wasn't watching it in IMAX?
That's fair.
I felt like it needed to be in IMAX to work as well that it did. And I guess maybe I need to just go back and stream it, which is probably not as good as watching it in just a general theater. But it's that because it's a very straightforward plot, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you want out of a summer blockbuster. But to me, there just wasn't a lot to it beyond that really cool IMAX effect. The flip side is, yes, it's really cool that they're, Tom Cruise flew the plane himself. They got the IMAX camera into the plane. I guess maybe it's just the fact that it's out of sight, out of mind. I think more about his stunts from Mission Impossible, more to me as like, wow, that's really insane. I keep going back to Ghost Protocol, where he's crawling on the outside of the Burj Khalifa. I'm like, okay, he was strapped into a plane. He's on. Yeah. Now, obviously, he has wires on the building, but like this stuff is like, oh my god, he's up this high, not in a plane. I guess there's just more of a wow factor to me in those movies than there was here, and so that's why. Again, it's not a bad movie by any means. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't go much further than that for me, than that stunt aspect.
I understand all of those things. I do think this movie had good performances for the most part. It's not anywhere near like the best script of the year. And I thought this movie was just kind of pulling from a lot of different things. They're pulling from Star Wars. They're pulling from, there's the whole sequence.
It basically is Star Wars.
The whole third, everything that happens after the Star Wars part feels just like a Mission Impossible movie. It feels like Pete Maverick Mitchell turned back into Ethan Hunt, and he's running like Tom Cruise. So either way, I'm not going to nitpick it. I do think it was. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. I think it's not going to win Best Picture or anything, and that's fine. I'm glad that it's recognized. I'm glad that we are to the point now where we are willing to recognize billion-dollar movies, 2 of them for that matter, with the Oscars and Best Picture. But it's easy a top 5 movie for me. So, okay, let's go on. What's your next one?
My next one is Tar.
Yes.
Which could very well win an Oscar for Cate Blanchett. Although, to be honest, I think I would probably give it to someone else who we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Same.
Really, this is on my list because of her performance. It's just an absolute masterclass in how to take a character and build it and gain sympathy for it, even though the character is like one of the worst people that you could meet. The first half hour of the movie, so I should probably explain what it's about. She plays Lydia Tarr, who's a world-renowned orchestra composer. Excuse me, totally blanking for a second. First ever female chief conductor of a major German orchestra. The movie follows her and her process of preparing for this new show and potentially some corruption within who she's selecting to be her new assistant. And her downfall ultimately because of some of the actions that she takes. It really places you into this kind of high class, hoity-toity world. The first half hour of the movie is essentially 2 scenes. It's her being interviewed, and then the second one is her giving a masterclass at a university. And it's all her. These scenes where she's giving these lengthy monologues and just absolutely owning the room. And like I said, it's not a character that you particularly like, but she garners sympathy for the character while also making it clear that she's in on the joke in subtle ways. And then to me, I know there's been debate back and forth over whether or not the movie is a comedy. I think the third act has some of the best black humor that I saw in a film this year. There was one moment in particular, not to spoil it for anyone who wants to watch it, that I just like, oh, that is so good. So yeah, I think for her performance alone, it's worth the list.
This one just missed. I think I had in my top 20. Very good movie, very good performance. For me, it just felt like a less rewatchable version of Whiplash. Just somebody just berating, not necessarily a student, but that type of thing. But no, she's very rightful for the Oscar that she's probably going to get on Sunday. And she was far and away the best part of the movie. Todd Field directed this and did great with this film. I have no negative things to say about it. It's just not one that I particularly enjoyed all that much. It's probably not one that I'm going to revisit. But I all the respect for it, because I do think it is legitimately probably one of the best 10 best movies of the year. Just wasn't one that I had quite as high on my list. But she is fantastic. She is wonderful in this movie. All right, let's go. Okay, every movie from here on is on both of our top 10 lists. Oh, I just got out of focus. That's weird. All right, starting with Matt Reeves' The Batman. This is another installment in the many reboots of the Batman franchise. How many Batmans do we need? But what can you say? This is, I think, the best thing to come out of DC Studios since The Dark Knight. And I don't think there's much debate there. DC has been a mess. They have had some movies that have stood out. Wonder Woman, I thought, was particularly strong. Obviously, The Joker won some awards. I didn't really care for that movie, but I thought Matt Reeves' The Batman that came out earlier in 2022 was fantastic. Robert Pattinson is Bruce Wayne. Zoe Kravitz is in this movie. Paul Dano gives a better performance, I think, than what he was nominated for in the Oscars as the Riddler. I mean, again, it's one of those things where the actor gets nominated for something. I think Hong Chau's kind of the same way this year too. She got nominated for The Whale, but I think The Menu may have been her better performance. But either way, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Andy Serkis, Colin Farrell is unrecognizable as the Penguin. I don't think he was particularly the best part of this movie, but he was absolutely unrecognizable. I thought this was a great movie. I'm not, it's another example of the Batman being outshined by his villains. But I think that's okay. I have no issues with that. I think that we've been doing this since the 80s. I think Jack Nicholson was outshining people. I think Heath Ledger was outshining people. And Paul Dano was outshining people, and that's fine. Robert Pattinson was a perfectly fine Batman, and that movie deserved a sequel. It's going to get a sequel, and who knows how many more we're going to get of it. But I really, really enjoyed this version of the Batman.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I totally agree with you on Paul Dano. God, the scene towards the end when he and Batman finally have their face to face is just so good. Maybe one of the best moments in movies this year. I was very iffy on it at first, being, just absolutely loving the Nolan trilogy and Dark Knight in particular. Maybe one of the best, maybe the best superhero movie of all time. So I'm like, okay, watching the trailer, I'm thinking, this feels a little bit like the Nolan movies. Do I really need this interpretation of the character? And then I was pleasantly surprised that it was more of a mystery detective story, almost like a Fincher movie in the first hour or so.
Yes, correct.
Than it was a superhero movie. And I think you get, in the total of the 3-hour running time, you get 2 action scenes. You get the chase in the middle of the movie, and then the scene in the stadium at the end. And I appreciated that it was really more focused on the story, on the corruption, on the mystery behind the Riddler. That made it a really engaging movie and gave us a worthy interpretation, which is, tricky to do when we just had 3 Batman movies, in the late aughts. And then, we'll talk about the Ben Affleck ones. But we had the Nolan trilogy. And so, for the DC character kind of being recycled a lot, I really appreciated that we had that different take that, it was a 3-hour running time.
Yeah, I know. It's long. I mean, I love Zodiac, and this felt like Zodiac. And that's fine. It's again, it's based on a different run of the comics where Batman at his core is a detective. I mean, that's who the character is. We're so used to the Marvel characters where everybody has to have a superpower, or you have to have all this, high technology, like the technology or whatever. But he's just a really rich dude who's just a good detective. And so that's what we saw, and I thought it was fantastic. I'm excited to see what else they're going to do with this franchise. If every Batman movie is like this, keep doing them. But I don't know how many times we need to reboot the Batman.
And it's good they didn't bother with the origin, because we did not need another origin.
Right. No, we don't need another origin story.
And B, I was really happy that, even though I know they filmed a new Joker scene with Barry Keoghan, yes, I was glad that they resisted the urge to put it in the movie. I know it came out a few weeks later as like an online exclusive, but I was like, I don't need the world building. That the future franchise, just let this stand alone. Let it be a really good Batman movie, and done.
I agree. This one was 7 on my list and 9 on your list. All right, what's next?
Next is, I am so glad we both have this on our list, because if it wasn't on yours, I was going to fight you. And I get it, because it is so lovely. It's Babylon, which I had as number 4. I had as number 4. And you had as your number 9.
Yeah, I had it 9, but still, yes.
So every Christmas I'm home, and I'm visiting family, and I went with my family to watch Babylon, which was an utter mistake.
That's a choice.
An utter mistake. And I mean, they're both like huge fans of La La Land, and so it's going to be another old Hollywood. What would you expect from Damien Chazelle? And then the first 10 minutes it rains elephant poop. Okay, what did I get them into for 3 hours of that? The movie was over, and we all kind of looked at each other, and I'm like, well, I loved it, and they both hated it. So that's it. I get it. It's a love-hate movie. It's, as I said, from Damien Chazelle, Diego Calva, Margot Robbie, who is just absolutely astonishing, Brad Pitt, Gene Smart. It follows Margot Robbie's character, who is kind of rising through the ranks in Hollywood. Gets her first performance, continues to grow as she is rising, and Brad Pitt's character is declining. A little bit of a Star is Born parallel. It's truly a Hollywood epic, to the running time, to the production values. I love the way that Damien Chazelle is able to build a scene. I think there's a scene maybe an hour into the movie where Margot Robbie is filming. She's filming a movie it takes place on a college campus, and things keep going wrong every time they try to start a take, and things just get worse and worse and worse, and they just crank up and crank up and crank up for a solid 7 or 8 minutes, to the point where it's almost unbearable to watch the scene, because something's gonna happen. And the fact that they're able to do that several times in the movie, I loved that. I loved the homages to old Hollywood. I loved the costumes. I loved the performances. The one thing I didn't love is the thing that it got nominated for. I thought the score was a little too pulled from La La Land, but okay, it's fine. But yeah, just in general, I'm a sucker for movies about movies. It was clear that how much he loves Hollywood from this. I'll give him he earned the right to experiment after La La Land. He definitely did it, and I think it worked. Others don't agree.
No, I'm with you. It is a very divisive movie. It is he did a lot with this movie. We'll talk about another movie that also did a lot. And I think that movie was a little more successful doing a lot, but I also really enjoyed this movie. I've been a fan of Damien Chazelle ever since Whiplash. Whiplash and La La Land in particular are 2 of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. First Man was also a really good movie that I enjoyed. It was just not quite there for me.
Yeah.
But I had a great time with Babylon. It was, as you said, it was a lot. It has great performances. Diego Calva was fantastic. He is the lead in this movie. I know that Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie are all over the marketing, and Margot's very heavily involved in this movie. It's also essentially about her, but Diego Calva is great. Also climbing up the ranks of Hollywood, and you follow him a lot. I was going to say, okay, I don't know. Where do you stand on the choice to use the montage at the end of Babylon?
I was actually just about to ask you that. I think it must have been pretty expensive.
In particular, I loved that they had a clip from Avatar, which sequel was coming out and competing with Babylon in the theaters during the month of December. I thought that was a
It was bold.
choice.
It was bold.
That was a choice.
I mean, it made sense for it being in there because the montage was movies that pushed Hollywood forward. Starting with the trip to the moon and then all the way to Avatar. Whether or not Avatar's from a story perspective, it's not great.
Yes,
but you can't debate that the technology, transformed the way that we worked with CGI on film. So I appreciated it. I think its inclusion was definitely the one of the side effects of doing more. Did it need to be in there? Probably not. Am I a sucker for it? Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I loved it. No, the other thing you mentioned, that scene where they're shooting, at the college campus or whatever.
Mm.
I think that was the funniest scene in all of film 2022. I mean, I laughed so hard during that 7 to 8 minutes of that movie. I just enjoyed that. But yes, this is a very divisive movie. I can understand the large population of people that did not care for this movie. But I'm glad that Damien Chazelle got the chance to do this and make his quote unquote passion project. And this is what his passion project was. Happy for you, man. Yep. Go for it. 3 for them, 1 for you, whatever it has to be. This is just a fun time with the movies.
If history says anything, he's going to do like La La Land 2.
Probably.
It's like the makeup for Tomorrowland was incredible too. Yeah,
exactly. All right, next on our list, this is a movie that I have number 8 and you had number 7. Mm-hmm. This is a movie, before I say what it is, the first time I walked out of this film, I wasn't in love with it. I think I was probably comparing it too much to the director's previous work, one film in particular that I absolutely adore, mm-hmm. And think it's one of the best films of the last decade. But it is the movie that I have thought about the most since it came out. And this movie is Jordan Peele's Nope. I have revisited it. I've now seen it a couple times, and it's not as good as Get Out.
Agreed.
But it is it's a thought-provoking experience that's also simultaneously just a fun blockbuster, which he found a way to combine those things very well in ways that other filmmakers can't do. Nope is, I think it's like Jaws and Signs. I mean, he's very much channeling Steven Spielberg, M. Night Shyamalan, sci-fi, blockbuster. I just had so much fun with this movie. Again, I didn't love it when I walked out of the theater the first time. I think I had more questions than I had answers. And I do think there are still some plot holes about this movie that I don't totally understand. And there are some certain things about this movie that I feel like I am still kind of mixing up with Don't Worry, Darling, because those are not the same movie. But still, this is the movie, as I said, that I have thought about the most. And it ended up being one of my 10 favorite movies of the year. And I just loved it so much. Keke Palmer, I'm not surprised, but I'm upset that she didn't get nominated for something, although I think there was some category fraud there. I'm not exactly sure. I think they were trying to say she was supporting, but she was really the lead. I don't know, whatever the case. I thought she was fantastic. Daniel Kaluuya was great, but Keke Palmer was the star of this movie, and she deserved more love from all awards bodies, not just the Academy.
It's interesting because you're absolutely correct that it's Jaws. I think at first everyone was like, okay, it's his Close Encounters. But especially with the addition of the director who's obsessed with going out and getting the footage, is definitely Jaws. I just love it. I feel like it was the same way with Us. He is so good at making these movies that you can just interpret in multiple ways. It's like, there's about 5 different ways you can read the Gordy's home scene.
Right.
Like,
I know.
And it works on the context of the plot, but also like, what is he trying to say here? And we don't get a lot of that today. It's a lot more cookie cutter. It's a lot more, the message is just kind of spelled out. So, I mean, is it a movie about miracles? Is it a movie about the, obsession with sensationalism? just so many different ways to take it. I thought it was scary in some moments. It was uncomfortable in some moments. The digestion scene in particular, and it was hilarious. And he balanced it all really well, and I think it just continues to make strong movies.
Yeah, I agree. I think he will. He is certainly very quickly became one of our greatest living filmmakers. And as I said, Get Out is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 to 20 years. It's one of the only, it's not really horror, but it's one of the only films in that genre, even that I really have much affection for. And so with this one, I really enjoyed it. It just felt to me like this was just a fun movie. I'm glad I saw this in the theaters. Watched it at home as well, and it held up at home pretty well too. But yeah, just a great time. Okay, what's next?
Next is one that we both have ranked in our top 5. We're at that point now. One that is a prime example of why I'm so glad that streaming services are getting a little bit more open about putting their stuff in the theater. Because I saw this movie twice, and I think it might have worked a little bit better with an audience. Still great the second time. But it's Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out. Once again, following Benoit Blanc, Daniel Craig having just a hell of a time. Like, it's clear. You watch him in the later Bond movies, and it's clear that he wants to be done. He wants to be out of there. And you watch him in these movies, and he's just like hamming it up and enjoying every moment of it. And so I hope we get 10 movies with him doing this character, as long as he continues to enjoy it. He travels to an island in the early days of the pandemic, which plays, somewhat of a role within the plot. To a tech billionaire's island, he's been invited to a murder mystery that the billionaire is putting on. Surrounded by the billionaire's friends, who all in a way are kind of leeching off the billionaire's success. Someone ultimately ends up dead, but the mystery extends far beyond the dead body. We got a fantastic supporting cast too. Before I talk a little bit about the plot, Edward Norton is the billionaire. Dave Bautista, Janelle Monáe is fantastic.
Incredible.
Who's the female lead? Kate Hudson, Catherine Hahn, Leslie Odom, just a fantastic supporting cast. We got 3 Eat the Rich movies last year, which is great. It's great. We got this, we got Triangle of Sadness, and we got The Menu. Triangle of Sadness it's not on my list, and it's not on yours, and frankly, I didn't think that it really worked. Enjoyed The Menu, but this one I thought it was by far the best of the 3. I love the scene where he's confronting Edward Norton in the room. He's kind of spoiled the mystery for the party guests. And Edward Norton says, it took me so long to put this together. I had Gillian Flynn write the mystery. And then the twist of the movie kind of takes the same approach as Gone Girl. I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. I love the general message of the movie in that you come into it thinking that it's going to have the super complex answer to the mystery, which, honestly, the first Knives Out had, kind of a twisted answer to how they got to the murder there.
Right.
But the whole point of the movie is that it's simple. The solution to the murder is simple, even though it looks complex, the idea of a glass onion. And I love it. It's kind of Rian Johnson who, did the original, did Last Jedi, did Brick, which is a fantastic thriller from the aughts that I don't think got nearly enough appreciation. He's kind of thumbing his nose at the audience. Like, you're sitting here trying to figure this out. It's really simple. Stop overthinking it. Down to some of the characters in the movie, he has the friend on the island with him who's continually telling you to ignore him.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, it's clearly he's going to be part of the solution to the mystery. And you're just supposed to ignore him. So I appreciated that that take on the mystery.
Yeah, I agree. I love this movie. I was very vocal about it on Twitter and on this show. I did not get the chance to see this in the theater, and wish I did. So I was not thrilled with Netflix's release strategy. Happy for you. Happy for you that you live in a city that allowed you that experience. But I did watch this at home, and I loved every second of it. Huge fan of the original Knives Out. I don't feel like this quite reached that mark for me, but it's still. I mean, this is still a top 5 movie of the year for me, even without hitting that mark. Janelle Monáe, I think, was fantastic. I'm. It's unfortunate that also she did not receive much love from the Academy or from any awards bodies, because she had a very difficult task in this movie. I won't spoil it for people that haven't seen it at this point, but she has a very difficult task in a performance, and I thought she crushed it, similar to what Ana de Armas did in the original. She was even better than that. Daniel Craig, as well, as you talked about it. Yes, he was loving his time there. He was just eating up his screen time, more so than what he was doing in the Bond movies. By the end of that run, you're totally right there. I just had a lot of fun with this movie. I have not watched it again since. And I really need to go back and rewatch this. Now that it's different when you watch it, and now you know what's going to happen and everything with these kind of movies. But I thought the performances were all great. The choice to just flat out say we're in a pandemic was obviously, a choice that not a lot of filmmakers will do. Mm-hmm. And I know we're getting more of these movies, and as long as Netflix is making money off of them, then we'll continue to get these movies. I love it.
One other thing about the cast, we talked about Janelle Monáe rightly, but Dave Bautista, the career choices that he's making are fantastic.
I love it.
Like, honestly, far better than what The Rock has done. Correct. And it's great. The Rock is.
He doesn't want to be Dwayne Johnson. He doesn't want to be. He's flat out said that. He does blockbuster movies. He's in a part of the Marvel universe, but he's not that. He doesn't want to be that type of performer, that type of actor. He's making, he's making really good career moves, and he's choosing to be in good movies. And this is just another example of that. He was fantastic. And I love Catherine Hahn. I don't know that she was the best part of this movie, but I just love Catherine. But yeah, so this is a movie that was in both of our top 5s. I had it at number 5. You had it at number 3. Mm-hmm. This next movie, I have at number 3, and you have at number 5. This is Avatar: The Way of Water. This is another long, epic sci-fi film from James Cameron, another movie that took 30 years to make, or whatever it was. The first one came out in 2009. And here we are, 2022, finally getting its sequel. I don't know if I told you this. This is the movie that I had no trailers before. I sat there in a full IMAX theater, and people are still filing in, and the time hits, whatever the time started, and the movie just starts. Like, oh, okay.
Because I think it's like, I had the Oppenheimer trailer and had a Barbie trailer.
Yes, exactly. I was excited to see those because I had just read that they were going to be showing in front of Avatar, or that they were coming out that weekend. So I expected to see them, and no, it was just straight into Avatar. This movie is not known. Neither of these movies, the original, the 2009 original, or this movie, are known for its scripts. It's not known for its performances. These are visual spectacle movies that need to be seen on the biggest screen possible. And that's what we got. And it is a beautifully shot film. It is just all the water stuff in this movie is incredible. Disney, as a company, has taken it upon themselves to try and do as much work in water as possible. I'm calling it the Disney Water Trilogy. They did not do very well with the water shots in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, if you ask me. And I'm sure The Little Mermaid will not hold up to Avatar: The Way of Water. But I thought the water stuff, all the whale, whatever that thing was, all that stuff was fantastic. Same cast of characters. The Sigourney Weaver thing was kind of distracting for me.
Weird. Yeah.
I don't know why we had to do that. It's not a spoiler. Sigourney Weaver, who was obviously in the first movie, is also in this movie, but she's playing a child. But again, this is all motion capture stuff, so it's not like she's having to, I don't know, whatever. I just thought it was distracting. That was probably far and away my least favorite thing about this movie.
They need to shoehorn Sigourney Weaver in there somehow.
Yeah. And that's that's what they wanted to do. But either way, this is $1 billion movie like its predecessor. The third one, I'm sure, will make another $1 billion. This is what they do. This is what James Cameron does. Beautiful movie. If you haven't seen it, it's still playing. I would say seek it out on the largest screen possible, but it's probably not playing in IMAX theaters anymore. So you lost that at least, but still, this is a movie. And I'm really glad that I went out and saw the original when they re-released it over the summer. I think it was like August. Because I watched it when it first came out, but it's not one that I've revisited much since, even though it's been on streaming and all everything. But the most experience I've had with this movie is in the parks. It's at an Animal Kingdom and the Flight of Passage ride. So like just watching this movie again on a huge screen just felt like I was back on Flight of Passage, which was pretty cool. I wasn't moving, like I would be on the ride.
For that reason, it actually knocked it down just a slight peg. Because the whole
time
I'm sitting there thinking, Flight of Passage is such an amazing ride. Like, I don't get the wind in my face. I don't get the water. Like,
yes,
I don't get the original James Horner score, which I felt was kind of missing from this. And like, when I've had that experience, it's kind of a step down to sit in a seat, just a normal seat to watch it. But it's fine. I mean, it also doesn't cost $170 for a one-day ticket. That's a discussion for another time. Yeah. And I feel like I can probably open myself to criticism here by saying that it's mostly the visual effects. When I said I didn't put Top Gun on my top 10 for that, I felt like it didn't necessarily need the IMAX though. It's more about the visuals themselves, the animation. You're right, the water is phenomenal. I saw it 3 times. I saw it just in regular 3D, high frame rate 3D, and then IMAX 3D, just standard IMAX 3D, and then I saw it in Dolby Cinema 3D, which was also the high frame rate. And the first time I saw it in high frame rate, it took me a little bit of time to adjust. It felt really weird. The Dolby Cinema 3D smooths out that high frame rate, and it was amazing. Like, it felt like watching the original one, what it was like in 2009, to see 3D be used in that way. It felt like going back to that. So that was fantastic. I think it got a little better in the story department than it did the first time. I hope that they don't use Quaritch as the villain again for the third movie. They need to move on from that. But yeah, it was just delivers scene after scene after scene of knockout beauty, and that to me is like that's what I go to the cinema for. So yeah, I don't think it has to be seen in IMAX, but definitely if you can still see it in 3D. I think Regal, they're doing their Best Picture showcase, and they are showing it in 3D as part of that.
It's still showing in 3D, I think. Yeah. Well, at least the theaters here. Again, this goes back to I live in a small town, you live in a large town. I've only seen this movie one time. We were going to go see it last weekend, but we got dumped a half foot of snow on us, so we didn't make it out. I saw it, but my showing was, it wasn't technically IMAX, but it was a large format screen. It also wasn't in 3D, which at the time I wasn't bothered by, because I don't really love going to see 3D movies, but everything I have heard is that the technology has improved so much that this is a movie that really needs to be seen in 3D. Don't know if I'll get to it or not, but either way, it's just a movie you just have to experience. It's just a visual spectacle masterpiece. What else can you say? That's what Jim Cameron does. He makes spectacles. I feel like I had one other thing I was going to say about that movie, but either way, we'll move on. We have 2 movies left.
Yes.
Both of these movies are in our top 2. They're just reversed. So we will start with you have the next one, right? Yeah.
Yes. I have the next
what is this one? This is your number 1. This is my number 2.
Yeah, it's my number 1. Your number 2. Yep. This one, I think I'm debating whether I think our 1 and 2 are going to end up swapping director and picture, and I'm wondering if this one maybe has a better shot at director, because the directing branch tends to go for a little bit weirder, and so I think the directors here could definitely pull it off. It is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, to have a movie that came out in March of last year as my number 1 movie of the year is absolutely insane. But I don't think another movie came out in the meantime that moved me the same way that Everything Everywhere did. It's Michelle Yeoh, who we discussed earlier, she's in the horse race with Cate Blanchett for Best Actress. I think she's going to end up pulling it out because her performance is just is stellar. She is a Chinese immigrant. She and her husband run a laundromat. She ultimately ends up learning that she's been selected to help restore balance to the multiverse that's being destroyed by a character who I won't spoil. And it's ultimately a story of family. It did the multiverse a lot better than another multiverse movie that we got last year. Just the sheer inventiveness of the worlds that they created. A great sci-fi movie, but also the relationship between her and her husband and her and her daughter. Just very emotional. I don't know that another movie has ever made me cry at the idea of two rocks sitting next to each other. So it's got that. I loved that the Daniels, the directors of the movie, were just kind of turned loose to make this big, bold, inventive sci-fi film that has this really beautiful message at the center. And so to me, I didn't see another movie that was as inventive, as touching, as moving as this movie was.
Yeah. What was the most impressive thing to me about Everything Everywhere All at Once is I have seen movies that have tried to do all the things that this movie tried to do, and they always fail. Mm-hmm. If they don't totally fail, they come up short. This movie was incredibly successful with trying to do all the things it was doing. As you talked about, this is a family drama at its core. It's also a multiverse hopping action film that touches on all sorts of other genres. This is an acting masterclass from a random group of experienced and unexperienced performers. Michelle Yeoh, as you said, I agree. I think she gives a great performance. I don't know if she'll beat Cate Blanchett. I would like to see her win. But this movie is cleaning up in the award circuit. And I am here for the Ke Huy Quan resurgence. The Renaissance. The Quanaissance. Is that what we're calling it? If you aren't familiar with Ke Huy Quan and you haven't been following the awards circuit this year, he is the young actor that he was Short Round in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, I think.
Yes. Yep.
He was also in The Goonies, and he was in like two big, huge blockbuster movies in the 80s, and then he struggled to find work and eventually retired from acting. He was working behind the camera, doing some stunt work, being a stunt coordinator, and he basically thought to himself he just didn't think there were roles for Asian actors in this country. And then, as he's talked about on a variety of on shows and interviews, he saw the movie Crazy Rich Asians and realized that there was a place for people to look like him to star in big, huge, successful, good movies. Told his agent he wanted to get back into the game. Weeks later, he gets a phone call that these directors are doing this movie and wanted him in it. And it's an incredible resurgence. And I'm so happy that he's doing this. I do not think we've seen the last of him. I know he's going to be in other stuff. I think he's going to be in the Loki season 2 coming up. He's great. Stephanie Hsu is also great in this movie. James Hong, Jamie Lee Curtis. I do not think Jamie Lee Curtis needs to be the person we're recognizing from this movie. She was not my favorite part.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the SAG Awards wanting to recognize her, but I think Stephanie Hsu is the better performance from a supporting role in that category from this movie. So if we're going to give it to anybody at the Oscars, I think it's her. This movie I think it's swept all the guilds. You talked about maybe this one taking director and the next movie we're going to talk about maybe taking Best Picture. I don't know if that's the case. This movie has won Directors Guild, Writers Guild, Screen Actors Guild, Producers Guild. I think it will be Best Picture at the Oscars, which I'm fine with.
Okay,
it is not my It is not my favorite movie of the year. It's not one that I honestly see myself revisiting a ton. Um, but I cannot take anything away from this movie. I think it is far and away the most successful film of the year, the best film of the year. I think it's better than the movie I have at number one that we're going to talk about here in a second. But I just didn't quite enjoy it quite as much because they were doing a lot. But as I said, I think they were very successful in doing all the things that they tried to do.
I always say that my favorite movie of the year needs to show me something that I've never seen before, or make me think
I agree.
I've never seen before, or that I never thought before. And this movie did it.
It did that. Yes.
Continuously for 2 hours. Yep. Yeah.
I think I went back and read my review, my Letterboxd review for this movie, and I think I said something like, "I don't see this movie being in any sort of awards conversations, but I'm glad that it's here. I'm glad that I saw it." I was incredibly wrong. It is just, as I said, it is just sweeping everything. It's cleaning up at the awards. So we'll see if that happens. All right, the last one we're going to talk about here. This is your number two. This is my number one. This is a movie that, from the moment I walked out of the theater after seeing this movie, I said this is going to be the Best Picture winner. I don't know that it'll win. I do think Everything Everywhere will win Best Picture, but this is my number one. It's The Fabelmans. It's Steven Spielberg. It's his biopic, sort of. This is a thing that directors are doing a lot of lately. We've seen it from Alfonso Cuarón. We've seen it from Sam Mendes. We've seen it. No, I don't remember. Several directors are doing this now, where they're telling their coming up story, how they got into the business, why they fell in love with Hollywood, with movie making, all that stuff. And this is Steven Spielberg's, and I think I think it is maybe not far and away, but I think it's the best of this genre movies we've seen lately,
without a doubt.
Steven Spielberg is, I think, probably the greatest living filmmaker. He's far and away the most successful living filmmaker when you talk about how many films he's made and how successful they have all been. I don't think this is his best movie necessarily, but I still think it's easily towards the top of his list. Michelle Williams is great in this movie. Paul Dano, as I already mentioned, is good. I do think he was better in The Batman. Judd Hirsch has a small but noteworthy performance. Seth Rogen is fine. Gabrielle LaBelle, though, who plays Spielberg, the Spielberg stand-in in this film.
Yeah.
For like the last, he's not like the first 30 minutes. I just rewatched this movie last night, actually. He's not in the first like 30 minutes or so, but he's in the rest of it. And I think he's fantastic. I think he's the best part of the movie. It's a coming of age story. It basically follows him, Sammy Fabelman, which is a stand-in, of course, for Steven Spielberg as a kid. Follows him, from the first time he went to see a movie in the movie theater, and all the way up basically through high school into college, where he decides he wants to become a filmmaker. And it's just, I agree with you. I don't know that there was anything about this movie that I hadn't seen before, so I can understand where you're coming from and why you would choose Everything Everywhere. But this is just a movie that I could see myself revisiting, and I don't know. I just love this movie. It's another Hollywood movie about Hollywood, which Hollywood loves. So for that reason, I could see it maybe winning Best Picture, but either way, it's very much deserving of the awards it's gotten. I don't think it was the best performances of the year. They're all noteworthy for sure. But to me, I think the score in this movie is strong. I don't even remember if it was nominated, but yeah, I really enjoyed The Fabelmans. Really.
I think it struck me. Well, one, it struck me because as I was watching him as a young kid in the first half hour of the movie, I'm like, oh my God, that was me as a kid. You know, and then shooting the train crash and, watching it with wide-eyed wonder. I loved that. It felt like we were watching Steven Spielberg work out his past on screen.
Yep.
And I liked watching him wrestle with that, his relationship with his parents relationship with each other. Just incredibly strong writing. It was Tony Kushner on the screenplay, which we've got in Munich and West Side Story there as well, among three of Spielberg's best movies. I also appreciate all the performances. I thought Michelle Williams was wonderful.
Yeah.
I think maybe not as strong of a performance as Kate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh, but still really good. And I could just the fact that I could feel Spielberg in the movie. I could see him wrestling with family, but also his love for film and the power of film. The scene toward the end where his bully confronts him. The ability of film to show us ourselves and what we may not like about ourselves. And there was a lot of ideas, and I felt like he balanced them well. It was a really heartfelt, really passionate film. And I agree with you. It's not his best, but clearly the most personal. And I appreciate that he had the opportunity to make it.
Well, you kind of touched on something. Steven Spielberg has a track record of putting himself into his movies. I mean, people joke about it, but E.T. was, I mean, obviously it was, wasn't real, but like, that was kind of him. I mean, that, the Elliot character really kind of was him. And he's been known to put kind of the family dynamic in his movies. We've seen that with E.T. and we've seen that with War of the Worlds and countless others. So this one felt even more personal, obviously, because it essentially was his story.
With families, but then also found families too. You see that with E.T., but then you also see it with Jurassic Park in the sense of Alan Grant and Ellie Settler, and then John Hammond's grandkids. Yeah. So it's family, but it's not necessarily the family that you expect.
Yeah, and I've listened to him, do a few interviews, and I won't spoil the movie for anybody that hasn't seen it. Not that it's like that big of a deal, but some of the stuff that happens in this movie were things that he's had to wrestle with in his life for a long time, and he went a very long time in his life without knowing the real truth. And that's something that in the movie we see it, we know what's happening, and the character knows it's happening right away, but that's not how it really shaked out in his life. He didn't really know that stuff was happening. So it is kind of, I'm sure it was kind of a therapeutic thing for him. I mean, we went through this pandemic, and Tony Kushner said, "What do you want to do?" And I think Kushner was the one that talked him into doing this. Let's do your story. This is the story that you talked about for a while, and it worked. Steven Spielberg can't really do wrong. Granted, not every one of his movies is a huge success, but I think this is one of his better movies. And I'm glad we got it. All right, let's recap. That was all of them, our 13 movies. Let's recap. What was your 10 through 1? Just so people know.
Yes, my number 10 was The Black Phone. Number 9 was The Batman. Number 8 was The Northman. Number 7 was Nope. Number 6 was Tar. Number 5, Avatar: The Way of Water. Number 4, Babylon. Number 3, Glass Onion. Number 2, The Fabelmans. And number 1, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
And my top 10, 10 was Cha Cha Real Smooth, 9 Babylon, 8 Nope, 7 The Batman, 6 The Banshees of Inisherin, 5 Glass Onion, 4 Top Gun Maverick, 3 Avatar: The Way of Water, 2 Everything Everywhere All at Once, and 1 The Fabelmans. Honorable mentions, any other movies that we didn't talk about that you want to give a quick shout out to that didn't quite crack your top 10, but we're right there on the cutting block for you?
Probably a couple of the ones that you included. I would definitely put Banshees of Inisherin in there. I'll give Top Gun some credit. It's still an enjoyable movie.
It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't need to be in your top 10. It's fine.
To be honest with you, it just I don't know. I really liked my top 10, and there were maybe 1 or 2 outside of it, but there wasn't a ton last year to the point where I was like fighting with what was going to go.
That's fair. I get that. My top 10 was pretty straightforward. There's 1 or 2 in there that I had RRR kind of in my top 10 for a while. But when it was all said and done, I ended up replacing it with Cha Cha Real Smooth. Cha Cha was just a movie I enjoyed more. But RRR, if you haven't seen it, it's an Indian film. It's on Netflix. It is one of the most visually appealing movies you're going to watch. It is an action film. It has musical sequences. It has one of the best songs of the year. In fact, it will probably win best song at the Oscars. Bros, I think, was the funniest movie of the year. We don't get a lot of studio comedies anymore, so this was the best one really we got, and I thought it was great. I thought Billy Eichner was fantastic. And I'll ask you this question: do you think Billy Eichner's press tour hurt this movie? Because I think it did. I don't think enough people saw this movie, and I think it's because of some of the things he was saying promoting this movie.
It's because the insinuation from the campaign was, watch this or you hate gay people.
Yes.
And I could that's not a message that the LGBTQ community responds to very well. And clearly not one that allies do either. Frankly, I thought that Fire Island was a lot more successful in that sense.
I didn't see that.
And as well as, spoiler alert, which was, I mean, kind of your basic studio dramedy, but I appreciated the depiction of the gay couple.
Yes. I wondered if you would have spoiler alert on your top 10. I didn't get, that was another one that didn't last in theaters very long, and it just recently hit Peacock, and I meant to get to it, but it just never happened. But that's one that I wanted to watch.
I loved Spoiler Alert was an enjoyable movie, but it wasn't so much the movie, it was watching a normal rom-com with a gay couple that ultimately was sad at the end, but it wasn't, your generic struggle. It has to be an Oscar-winning LGBTQ, film. It was just your standard weepy. And I appreciated the date scenes in the movie early on. It was just, everything was just normal.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see that depiction in a Hollywood movie. So I really appreciated that. I thought the movie was good. It wasn't top 10, but yeah, just from a representation standpoint, I appreciated that.
I had Wakanda Forever just kind of missing my top 10. I think it was a very weak year for the MCU, but I think that movie, all things considered, was fairly successful.
It was the best of the three. Yeah.
It was far and away the best of the three. This is notably, I've been doing this top 10s or in my Logies for a while now. Outside of 2020, this is the first year that I don't have either an animated film or an MCU film in my top 10. Notably, that's the case. Vengeance. Did you see Vengeance? The BJ Novak comedy, mystery, thriller movie. I enjoyed Vengeance.
I didn't care for it.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know. I felt like it was good up until the third act, and then I don't know. I just felt like
I understand that.
A little off the rails.
I get that.
It was a good idea. It felt a little preachy in its execution.
Yeah. And then the last one I'll shout out that I think was absolute. I think this is the movie that was robbed the most from the Academy, and it's The Woman King. The Woman King wasn't my favorite movie of the year, but it got no love. Gina Prince Bythewood should have been nominated for Best Director. Viola Davis was fantastic in this movie. It got no love from the Academy, and I just think that was an absolute travesty. I think that's probably the fault of its distributor, because it's a Sony movie and they're just not very good at that stuff. But that's a movie that I think more people need to watch. It is on Netflix. It's a very good film. I wish it was nominated for anything, but it did not make the cut. Okay. We've been doing this for a while. This has been fun. Yes. You have any other things you want to shout out? Any other movies, performances?
No, I will say coming into 2023 that Creed 3 was fantastic.
I haven't seen it yet. Okay. Don't spoil it for me. I'm going to go this week sometime. I did not get to it this weekend, but so far the three movies that I've seen for 2023 have not been good. So hopefully, I'm sure this one will far and away make that better. Yes, I have not seen it yet. Normally I'm at the theater for those kind of movies opening night, but it's just been a busy time for me right now. So I will get to it this week. This year, we don't need to talk too much about 2023. We can do that again later. I'm excited. There's some good stuff that we're going to get this year. I'm less excited for franchise movies than I have been in the past. I think I'm I don't want to say I'm growing out of franchise movies because I'm certainly not. If you can see around me, I'm a child in this room here, judging by all the toys behind me. But I don't know. There's just not very many of the franchise movies that are really exciting me. But I'm excited for the Oppenheimers and Barbie and I mean, I guess Dune's technically a franchise, but
Yeah.
I don't know. There's plenty of things coming out this year that I'm pretty excited for. But we'll probably have that discussion later. I think you and I can have another talk about some movies as we get a little later in the year. What do you think?
That's good. I will say though, I kind of agree with you. I agree with you on franchises. I think we're gonna have a stellar July though, with the new Indiana Jones,
Yes.
Mission Impossible, which we've been waiting
Yes.
ever for, which looks
Correct.
fantastic. Barbie and Oppenheimer in the same weekend.
Same day. Yep.
Same day. Yeah. And we were going to get the Marvels and that got pushed back. You know, we'll see how it does. But that Oppenheimer and Barbie, that weekend is just the box office fight is going to be phenomenal.
I cannot wait until that weekend. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know I don't know which movie I'm going to see first. I would love to see them both like back to back, but I don't know if that's like a realistic thing. But yeah, I'm very excited. So Karsten, I appreciate you coming on here. We've been talking about this for a while. I'm glad we finally got to do it. As I said earlier, you can follow him on his Letterboxd. I have it below his name there. Mine's there as well if you want to do that. If you're on Letterboxd, that's kind of a movie social media platform where movie geeks come to hang out. So follow us there. Craig and I, as I mentioned, we'll be back Thursday night for an Illini post-game show after the Penn State game. And then we'll be back for more regular shows once basketball season comes to an end. Karsten will probably be back later. We'll probably talk movies later on in the year. Who knows what will happen? If you enjoyed this, please drop a like, subscribe to the page, follow us on all our social media, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you, Karsten, and we'll chat soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.